Hi Bookship, it's Roz and I'm here with the Stand With Trans Kids tag, which is a lovely tag that Leo Bancroft created about 3 months ago. And I know I was tagged in it by someone and I usually write it down and I didn't, and I've forgotten who, so apologies whoever it was and thank you. Why has it taken me a little while to get around to this? Well, I've been saving this tag for this week because just like a week ago, it was Trans Pride here in Brighton, in Sussex, in England, the city where I live, and I thought it would be really nice to do the tag kind of like soon after that and celebrate what a great event that is. And I was there this time as a steward, as a volunteer, and wow, it was a real event. I think there was an estimate that there was maybe 20,000 people there, which is just wonderful, isn't it? And you know, like Pride has like kind of two sides, doesn't it? There's Pride should be about saying about protest, I suppose, about saying we're here and you know, our rights are important and don't ignore us, don't forget about our needs, you know. And it had that element. And then Pride is also about celebration, you know, like let's celebrate trans joy. And yeah, we had both those things in spades, so that was lovely. Leo has done some really nice prompts, and I will copy them in the description below, but I'll give you a kind of like abbreviated version of them out loud, if you know what I mean, rather than read them out in full. First prompt is to tag fabulous friends. Well, like I say, this tag's been knocking around for a while, and I had a look at Leo's playlist, which I'll link to below, and like most of the people I might have tagged, I think have done it. But if you haven't done it and you're watching this and you've got a channel, go for it, please. It's a special tag. Prompt number 2 then is Leo asks about books on our TBR pile that feature a trans or non-binary character, or non-fiction about trans and non-binary stuff. And I've got 3 that I'm going to mention. And one is a novel that I've actually got a physical copy of that I think I'm not going to read it until a bit later in the year. I've got to give it back to Tilly for a bit. And that's A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. And it's kind of like speculative fiction with a strong component of gender fluidity, or so I understand. The other 2 I don't have yet, but one is on order from my library, and that's Genderqueer, which is a graphic memoir by Maria Kababe. And I've been really enjoying reading graphic memoirs lately, and I thought that would be it would be a good opportunity. And the third one is one that I need to get hold of, and there's a particular reason why I want to read this book. Okay, and the book's called Uncomfortable Labels. Let me get this right. My Life as a Gay Autistic Trans Woman by Laura Kate Dale. Now, the reason I want to read that is because, or particularly want to read it, is because the organisation I work for supports disabled children, young people, and neurodivergent children, young people, and their parents and carers. And one thing that I've kind of learned over the time that I've been there, I suppose, and increasingly recently, is that there's a really interesting kind of interrelationship between neurodivergence and gender questioning, being non-binary, being trans. I'm not, I think it's complicated, but it's something that I really want to kind of understand even better. So sounded like the right book for me when I spotted it. Next prompt is a favourite book featuring a trans or non-binary character. Now, the book, I can't wave it to you because I've got it as an ebook, but the book I picked is Variations by Juliet Jakes, and it's not just about one trans character, it's about a whole series of trans characters, because this is a book, kind of like a book of short stories. But what she has done brilliantly is she's written a sequence of short stories to kind of recapture 200 years of trans history in the UK. So like all the different stories are like they're based on, as I understand it, real characters or real incidents, but she's sort of fictionalized them to kind of bring them to life and bring those people back to life. And they're like, you know, pretend letters or newspaper reports or film scripts or transcripts of imaginary interviews. Really good. I would really recommend it. It came out in 2021 and I read it that year, and it's still there in my head. Next prompt, number 4, is as Leo says, everyone has their own journey. So pick a book with a journey. And I wanted to find a book that was by a queer author with sort of queer characters, and both a physical and a metaphorical journey. And this one absolutely fits the bill. And that's A Long Way from Douala by Max Lobe, who's Lobe's from Cameroon originally. It's a moving but really enjoyable and vivid coming of age story that's also about football. Definitely a recommendation, that one. Prompt number 5, again, Leo says, none of us knows everything. So true. A book that taught you something about yourself or about the world. Now, I almost think you could pick half the books. No, 90% of the books I read for this prompt I could, because one of the things that I read for, I suppose, is to increase my understanding of the world and people and other people's experiences and other people's ideas. And that's why I read, try to read books that are by people from sort of different backgrounds and sort of cultures and genders and sexuality than myself, because that's a really enriching bit of reading for me. So the book I'm going to pick is The Divine Comedy by Dante, and which I'm really happy to have just finished this weekend. And this is Paradise, but you know, I've read all 3 chunks now. And the reason I'm picking that one is because, you know, Dante finished this in 1320. So, you know, this book is 700 years old. But in reading it, I got to know the ideas and the emotions and the religious faith and the genius and the imagination of intimately of someone, you know, who's been dead, coming up for 700 years. And that's what books can do for you. It's one of the reasons I just love reading. Okay, next prompt. Leo asked for things that we do that center ourselves or find out our inner joy. Obviously reading goes without saying. Apart from that, I'd say it's really important for me to get out in the green, you know, to go and walk or run in beautiful places, or just places with trees and sea and rivers and fields and that's what does it for me. And without that, I think I don't know what would happen to my brain. Prompt number 7 is to say what your walk-on music is, or the music that makes you feel at home in your body. Oh, now I found this a terribly hard prompt because I love all sorts of music and I have very sort of eclectic taste, but like my taste in books, I suppose. But I thought back to when I was a kind of slightly nervous, slightly shy 15-year-old who wanted to start kind of going out and having fun and experimenting a bit, but needed to kind of screw up her courage to do that. And the song that used to help me do that was Brass in Pocket by the Pretenders. Came out in 1979 and written by Chrissie Hynde and James Hanneman Scott. I think they have the writing credits for it. Great song, I love it. It's one that you can kind of get yourself up and going. Yeah. Prompt number 8. I ask for you to talk about your mentors and what they taught you or what they inspired you to learn. Again, I had to think about this a bit. And I thought right back to when I was a student at university, my first year as a student, and my father died suddenly, kind of out of the blue, unexpectedly, no warning. And that was a tough time for me, when I was sort of thinking like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this course? Where do I fit? How do I deal with all this? And I'd started doing a little bit of volunteering with the student volunteer kind of centre, and the volunteer coordinator there, Pam, kind of she must have spotted that I was a bit lost, and she really took me under her wing and got me doing sort of volunteering and got me to come on the committee and organise it. And there is no doubt that the reason I'm now working in the voluntary sector doing the kind of things that I do can be significantly traced back to Pam and that year. Prompt number 9 is some trans or non-binary booktubers, authors, actors, artists, whatever that you would like to kind of give a shout out to. Now, I've seen some really good and interesting lists of shout outs in other versions of this tag, and so I don't want to sort of just repeat the same ones, I suppose. So I'm just going to focus on authors. And first up, author I want to shout out, non-binary author Kay Tempest. So she's from the UK. Sorry, they. I just misgendered her. That's terrible, isn't it? They are a writer, a poet, playwright, novelist, and musician, and they're quite inspiring. And I've picked them because I'm going to see them in a week's time at WOMAD. Woohoo! Lucky me. Number 2, Akwaeke Amazing, another non-binary writer. I read The Death of Vivek Oji, and it was interesting because I was so looking forward to that book that I was almost disappointed by it when I read it. And then thinking back, it's kind of grown in stature since then. I think because what it does is it's like a book about a tragedy that also conveys that thing I was saying about joy and celebration as well in non-binary and trans sort of lives and identities and yeah. Another book I read that I have kind of interestingly mixed feelings about, I suppose, is Tori Peters. So that's another shout out, and trans author. And I read Detransition Baby, and I found that book absolutely fascinating and enthralling, and I learned a lot from it. I felt really stimulating. And then I've seen kind of mixed, like people that love it, and then I know like Kevy, the channel Say Kevy, is quite critical of it and quite angry with it. So it's that, and then that's further food for thought. So really interesting. Another shout out is Jay Bernard, who's a non-binary poet from London, sort of young black Londoner. Their collection Surge was an absolute, really blew me away. Very, very moving and linked to a couple of kind of significant tragic events, but with really beautiful poetry and language. If you like poetry, just want to look out for. Then The last two I'm going to give a shout out to. One is an author whose work I haven't yet read, but now I've heard about them, I want to, and that's Allison Rumford. And she's a trans writer who lives in my city, Brighton, and so it feels like, my most local trans author, I think, and so I feel like I should read her, shouldn't I? And her book that I've heard about is Tell Me I'm Worthless, which is a kind of trans gothic contemporary horror book, I think. So I should give it a go, probably in December when I have my genre December, I usually do. And my final mention is for a trans author who is an incredibly inspirational woman to me, who died relatively recently in 2020, and that's Jan Morris. And by the time she died, I think she was 94, and extraordinary life. She fought in the Second World War. She was involved in the first successful expedition up Everest. She transitioned in the 1960s, kind of came out in the early 70s, I think, was a journalist, a writer, a historian, a kind of art critic, extraordinary woman. And I'm picking her because I think she was the first, like as a child, she was the first trans woman, or any trans figure really, that I saw, read about, recognised, and sort of, that's my shout out. Then the final prompt is to talk about organisations that support trans kids or trans folk. And I'm going to do all ones from the UK. Mermaids, you've probably heard of already. So they're a UK organisation for trans children and young people. So I'm going to mention some other organisations that work with trans children and young people, either exclusively or as part of working with sort of LGBT plus youth. One is the Proud Trust. One is Just Like Us. They both do good stuff around sort of youth work and stuff in schools, and they have really good resources on their websites. There's the Colours Youth Network, which is LGBTQ young people of colour. So really offering something for that particular group, which is really, I think, important. Then a couple of Sussex ones, and an organisation that I is dear to my heart. It's like almost like a sibling organisation to the one where I work, and that's All Sorts. And All Sorts work with LGBT plus children and young people in the Sussex area, and they also support their parents, which I think is really important in, when you're talking about children. Parents need like a bit of help to kind of get on board, don't they? And All Sorts do that brilliantly. And also the other thing that All Sorts do is they actually have a group for 5 to 11-year-old gender questioning and trans kids, and I think it's so important that there's something for sort of children at that younger age, and a lot of organisations don't work right down to that age. And the other two I'm going to mention are not children and young people's organisations, but are Brighton-based Sussex organisations. And one is the Clare Project, and that's a sort of for trans and non-binary and intersex adults in the area, and it's very much a kind of like a user-run organisation in a which is really important, I think, and valuable. And finally, Brighton's Trans Pride, of course, which put on such a brilliant event a week ago, and do kind of other things around it. It's not just a sort of a one-off, march and that's it. And thank you for a brilliant tag, Leah.